Science in Pajamas. Alright, so welcome back, you guys. Today we're going to talk about fermentation. Now, what fermentation is, it's a type of process known as anaerobic respiration. Now, a lot of times when we hear the term respiration, we think about breathing. We respire. It's our respiratory system. But the reason why we call it that is because of a process that our cell goes through called cellular respiration. Now, this occurs, you have your cell, there's the nucleus, and then you have the mitochondria. Now, in the mitochondria, what happens is glucose, which is a carbohydrate from the food you eat, and oxygen, gas that you breathe in, and then it gets distributed to all your cells. The mitochondria takes the glucose and the oxygen and it breaks it apart. It breaks the bonds within them or within those molecules. And in doing so, it releases energy. It then takes that energy and stores it in something called ATP, which is an energetic molecule. It provides energy to every single function within the cell. But notice we needed oxygen to do that. And when you go through cellular respiration, you can actually get quite a few ATP molecules made from it. So from one glucose molecule, you can make upwards of 36 to 38 ATP. So you can make a lot of energy from one glucose molecule. But that's only if you also have oxygen from respiration. And that's why we call it cellular respiration. Cellular respiration is a process that we call aerobic respiration. Aerobic means that it requires oxygen. So it's a way to make energy, ATP, using oxygen. However, if oxygen is not present, the mitochondria cannot do its job. So then some cells, whether they're bacteria or what, can do anaerobic respiration. And what that is, it's a type of cellular respiration that does not require oxygen. Now, the thing about it is because it doesn't require oxygen, you can't get as much of the ATP made from it. But you can still get some. And we call this process anaerobic respiration. So we said aerobic respiration versus anaerobic respiration. Now the difference in these is whether or not oxygen is required. So this one needs oxygen gas, O2. This one, no oxygen gas needed. And that's kind of what the prefix AN means here. Anaerobic. An meaning not or opposing. Aerobic is referring to the presence of oxygen. So no oxygen in order to run this reaction. A type of anaerobic respiration is fermentation. Now, if that sounds a little familiar, that's because we use it all the time in the culinary arts. We use it to make things like cheese or yogurt or actually bread, beer, things like that, wine. So we use it for a lot of different things. We are going to talk about two types of fermentation, just briefly. Not going to spend a whole lot of time on them. First one is alcoholic fermentation. And we see this occurring in such organisms like yeast. And what happens is, again, doesn't need any oxygen. It still takes in glucose though. So it takes in glucose and it breaks it down to make ethanol, which is a type of alcohol, and carbon dioxide gas. Now this actually explains a lot. First of all, anytime you do fermentation or anaerobic respiration, very, very little energy is made from it. Not that much, usually only a couple ATP. However, when you're a single-celled organism like a bacteria, you may not need that much energy. Now this process is called alcoholic fermentation because one of the byproducts is ethanol, which is an alcohol. So we do use this when we're making things like beer or wine. We'll add grapes with glucose to make the wine. We add hops or wheat in order to make the beer, etc. And at that point, the reason why we're doing it is because we want to get the ethanol out of it. However, we also use this to make bread. When you add yeast to water and sugar, in order to activate the yeast, it starts to bubble. Now what that is the yeast is actually feeding on the sugar molecules. And when they feed on the sugar molecules, they get glucose from them. So they're able to do the alcoholic fermentation. And the bubbles that they produce is the carbon dioxide gas being given off. Now a lot of times when we make bread, you kind of mix all the ingredients, the yeast, the dough, or the flour, the salt or sugar, whatever the ingredients call for, and then it tells you to let the dough rise. Just sit there and let it rise. And over time, it'll kind of puff up. And the reason why it's puffing up is because of all of the carbon dioxide gas that's being excreted by the yeast cells. They are giving off this carbon dioxide gas. And then when you bake it, and that'll kill the yeast. It'll also burn off any alcohol, so sorry, you can't get drunk on bread. But in addition, when you cut into the bread, it's kind of spongy looking and has like all those little tiny air holes. Well, that's where the carbon dioxide was trapped in it when you heated it. So what the sponginess, the airiness that bread has is because of the carbon dioxide that gets trapped in it during alcoholic fermentation. Now, something I like to tell my kids is, when we talk about, if you remember from chemical reactions, this is your reactants, these are your products. Now, in terms of a yeast cell or any other organism going through alcoholic fermentation, this is its food, that's its waste product. So next time you see someone drinking beer or wine, what I want you to think of is where that came from. It is the liquid waste of yeast cells. Yes, I said that. It's the liquid waste of yeast cells. And this, that's just them exhaling. But yeah, think about that when you see alcohol and you start thinking it's cool at a young age. It's essentially the urine of yeast cells. It's a liquid waste. All right, next one we're going to talk about is lactic acid fermentation. And just like before, it is an anaerobic anaerobic respiration. So it is a type of fermentation. And this can be done in any number of bacteria, but we also actually see this occurring in our own cells. What happens is you take the glucose and your cells, certain cells, will use it to create something called lactic. Now, this is just the waste product. Lactate is also called lactic acid. Again, that's just the waste product. The point of the glucose is to break it apart in order to get energy from it. Now, we are a large multicellular organism. We need oxygen to provide enough energy to all of our cells in order to function and thus survive and live. But sometimes we cannot provide enough oxygen to certain cells. For instance, when you are working out, you ever notice how you start taking deeper breaths and you feel like you're out of breath when you're working out? And that's because your muscle cells are using oxygen at a higher rate. You are forcing them to work more than what they're used to, which is why you need more oxygen in order to power them. So what will happen is when not enough oxygen can be gained to do regular cell respiration at the mitochondria, your muscle cells will switch over to lactic acid fermentation. So they're still receiving glucose into the cell, but they're not able to get as much oxygen to run cell respiration and get, a lot of energy back. So instead, within the cytoplasm, they run this. And what happens is the glucose will be broken down and it'll make a few ATP, not many, just a little bit. And then this is the waste product, lactate. Now, this is an acid, but remember when we talked about acids and bases, not all acids are burned through your skin. However, it does have a bit of a tingling sensation. Since this is a waste product, it will actually be removed to the outside of the muscle cell. And what happens then is, when you work out and your muscles start to burn and you feel the burn? Well, what you're feeling is a buildup of lactic acid on the surface of your muscles. Your cell recognizes that it's a waste product. It tries to get rid of it. But right now, your body is just trying to get as much oxygen as it can to keep functioning. So cleaning off that lactic acid, not a big priority right now. Which is why, plus if you keep pushing yourself, you're going to make more and more of it, why the burn gets a little stronger and stronger and stronger. But this is also why over time, your muscles get used to it and your body adapts. You increase your lung capacity, which means you can get more oxygen in. Your muscles are able to then perform at a faster rate longer before they have to switch from cell respiration to lactic acid fermentation. Now, don't worry. Once you are done working out and you're able to catch your breath and return to regular cell respiration, your bloodstream is going to take that lactic acid off of your muscles and it'll filter it and get rid of it with your other waste products. So that's not a big deal. It's not going to hurt you. But yeah. All right. So just a brief a brief explanation on alcoholic and lactic acid fermentation. I hope you found this explanation good. It helped you out, helps you to understand the material. And in the meantime, you guys take care, and I will see you later. All right, you guys. Bye-bye.